Hi, I'm Dave Rarig. Roy asked me to make a little video to hopefully explain a little bit about how I made his Green River station on his train layout. So bear with my very amateurish film credits while I try to show some of the methods and techniques that I used. First off, this is a file here that I have of Roy. I call it Roy's layout. The first thing that I did, and with a lot of Roy's help, was get photographs of the actual station. And some of this was done by photographers unknown. They were taken from downloads from Google Images. Here you can see, if I can zoom in on this a little bit more, you might be able to pick up the station sign there. It says Green River. And I actually had quite a few different photos to work from. Here's another one. And here's another one. Here's one that, here's one that I actually used to make the sign, Green River sign, which I did a screen grab using my snip tool and then corrected it for a distortion using a photo edit program, and ended up with something like this, which I was then able to print on paper and use for the actual sign on the building. There's some more examples of what I did. Here's another photo of part of the station, the west side. And here's another one of the east side. And what I did is I took the snipping tool on my Windows program, and I cut bits and pieces out of these photographs, primarily doors and windows, which I then used to plug into a model builder program, which I'll show you in just a minute. I even went so far as to take little snips of architectural details, like this is a stone medallion, which I'm pretty sure you can't really see very well. I'll enlarge it a bit. This was a part of the architectural detail. I don't think you're going to be able to see it. I can't get the focus that tight. Well, at any rate, I then used Photoshop to clean it up and brighten it. And I came up with this image. Still can't quite get it in focus. There you can almost see it. At any rate, I used that to take a picture, if you will, of that particular element and then paste it into my model builder design program. The model builder is not terribly expensive. I think it was $45 for the software. It's offered by a company called Evan Designs, and I used a lot of the images that I have here. Here's a window image, for instance, which is the uncorrected version. Here's one that I cropped and adjusted it for the angle of the camera. And I used these windows and doors in the design of my station. Here's another one which you might find interesting. This is the, might call it crow's nest or whatever. It's an observation windows up on top of the station. If you look closely, you may be able to just barely make out that there's a a railing across here. It's kind of a red color. And this is the original photograph. And here's one that I modified slightly using a photo edit software package. And I removed that railing. I don't believe this is corrected yet for skew. Well, yeah, maybe. Well, I think I'm shooting it on an angle here off of my camera, so it makes it look like it's not square, but it is. And then I use this again to paste into my program to actually do the design page. Now I'm going to show you some of the pages that I designed using these components. So here I have a window, for instance, and I plugged that into my design screen. Let's see if I can bring that up here for you. I have a program called Model Builder. It's like I said, it's from Evan Designs. And this is what the design screen looks like when you start out. You tell it you want a new project, or you can open save files. You put the scale in here, in this case N scale 1/160th. And I'm going to tell it to open a saved file. Okay, so I'm going to open a save file. Saved in Model Builder, of course. And I have a lot of files in here, a lot of designs that I've done. Here's a little store that I designed. It's called 10 Point Bob's. So I'll open that. Now this is obviously not Roy's station. It's a much simpler building. And this shows you the actual design page in Model Builder, where I drew this store. And I'm scrolling down now on the design page so that you can see how it looks. What you can do is you can import either from the Model Builder patterns themselves. I'll pick out a door here, for instance, and I can place that onto my drawing. And it can be sized any size that you want. So there I just put a door with windows on top of my roof, which I don't really want it there. So I'm just going to click on it again and delete it, because I don't want to mess up this drawing. But anyway, that's the Model Builder program. It takes a good bit of practice to get proficient with it, but and it's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job. Anyway, after I did the design screen, then I used another software that I have, a freebie that I got off the internet, called Qt PDF. And what it does is it can be used to convert a drawing such as one done in Model Builder to a PDF file. And that's what I did on Roy's station. So here's the page one done in a PDF. Now this is the actual design as it looks, page one. This is on my computer screen. And this is what the printout looks like. And this is, I just printed this up this morning. This is done on just standard bond paper. You may be able to see there, those doors and windows I made from snips done from the images that we downloaded off the internet. And I inserted them onto my design screen so that we had doors and windows. And right there in those, on top of those pilaster cover wraps, you can see that's that medallion that I was trying to show a picture of and really couldn't get it to come into focus. But that's where I used that. And this is page 2. This is actually the design for the west wing on the top, and some more pilaster wraps. And this is part of the east wing, and more of the east wing right here. So as you can see, I think that's page 2. We'll open up page 2. Right. So this has several things on it. Like I said, this is the west wing. These are pilaster base layers right here. What I do is I print this on a piece of cardstock, and then I take these gray colored items right here, glue them onto a heavier piece of cardboard, and that becomes the pilaster, which is then glued onto the front of the building printout. Right here, these are the pilasters. So they're actually made separately. And these are the cover wraps that go around that heavy base. I actually did a second print on regular paper rather than cardstock, and wrapped that regular paper print around the heavy base of the pilasters, and then glued that onto the front of the design. Now let's see, this is sheet 3. This is the roof. This probably was one of the more difficult things to try to get the angles correct. This is probably about the 3rd or 4th attempt that I made trying to get this so that it looked correct. This is the main, these are the main roof pieces. And you can see here how it's angled. And then these are down underneath it are the end pieces. And they also have to be angled so that everything comes together in a shape of a trapezoid, more or less. Let's see, sheet 4. These are components that I made for the top part of the station above the pillars. This is like, it's almost like a brick fence. It's tough to see this unless I increase the size somewhat. There you can see that I've actually got the brick itself, and then the trim pieces that get glued over top of the brick. And in most cases, this was printed on cardstock, which was then glued first to a heavier piece of cardboard before it in turn was glued onto the basic structure. So it's rather a time-consuming process, because there's a lot of cutting and gluing. And this is sheet 5, and this actually shows the crow's nest portion where I put those windows in place. And oops, I don't really want that. And this piece down here, this is the roof of the crow's nest area. And here you can see this is tapered to fit the pitch of the roof, and with a door stuck in place there. So anyway, I would say probably about at least 50-60% of the time that I spent on making and doing this project was done on the computer, making the designs. They're going to say, well, where did I get the brick to begin with? Okay, well, it's not something that I bought. Well, sort of it is. I used a texture from Clever Models, one of their brick textures. This one here I made for the rear wall. So zoom in on here. Okay, this was one of the Clever Models textures, but not the whole texture. What I would do is I open it in a Corel paint shop program, and I cut out a portion, this portion here, of their texture sheet to make it just exactly the correct size that I needed for the rear wall. And I specified the size of the crop in inches according to the size that I actually wanted. And here's another piece. This is the side wall. Okay, and this is a small side wall. Now, why did I go to this much trouble? Well, anytime you bring an object into the Model Builder program, it is brought onto the design screen as something totally out of scale. It's much smaller. And what you have to do is then enlarge it or stretch it to the actual size that you need. And since I wanted to maintain the brick size and spacing, I had to specify the size that I wanted in order to be the finished wall size. And then once I imported that image into the Model Builder program, I was able to stretch it to the finished size that I wanted. And that then maintained the correct proportions between the brick size and line spacing and so on. Again, it was a rather complex operation. Now, after everything was all drawn, I made a couple drawings, and the first one here turned out not so great because when I actually built it in 3D by printing it on paper or cardstock, and then I got to looking at it and I measured it. This was drawn pretty much directly from the way the prototype looks. There's 7 bays. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 bays on the main portion of the station. And it turned out to be too big. And because Roy only had 12 inches wide to work with. And when I made this originally, this portion by itself came out to be over 9 inches across. So obviously I had to do something differently. And you said, well, why didn't I just make everything smaller? Well, I tried to maintain the door sizes. If you can follow my arrow here, this is the bottom of the door, and that's the top of the door. And that's a man door, which typically is 6 feet 8 inches high. So you can judge by that these window bays to the top of them are just probably almost 12 feet high from the bottom to the top. And I wanted to maintain that so that the building wouldn't look out of proportion. So I ended up having to cut 2 bays out so that I made the front, instead of 7, I made it 5. And I had to do the same thing on the side wings. So when all was said and done, now here's the mock-up that Roy had done. And he actually used my original print that I had done of the center portion with the 7 bays. And he kind of just cut and taped together the end wings to make it fit in his space. And I I just didn't like the appearance of it. To me, it just didn't look to be proportioned correctly. And I know I could do better than that, so I redid it. and I made the center portion just 5 bays instead of 7. If I can get a good view here of the original, I don't know if it'll show up or not. No, you really can't tell it on this shot. There, that's a good one. So you can see how long. This is the west wing. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 bays on that wing. There's 7 in the center, and then there's another, I don't know, 7 or 8 on the east wall, on the east wing. And that was just way too big. This is an older picture. It came from about the 1950s probably, or 60s, maybe 1960s. Here again you can see how I cut everything down, made everything smaller so it would fit. So I'm sure you've seen the finished product on Roy's Layout. And if any of you have any questions on some of the actual construction techniques that I used, I think that's going to have to wait for a later video, because it's just going to take way too long to put into this one. So for now, that's it. Happy modeling.